All right. Excited to talk about the always rosy, conflict-free founder-investor relationship ecosystem, which is good. We're going to focus today on early stage, kind of seed money, first money. And Laura, let me kick it off to you. Like, when you're a founder looking to take that, kind of open your company to the first investor, what is the most important couple things you have to focus on?
Yeah, so to give you guys a little bit of context, so Andy, with his firm SoftTech, is one of our earliest investors in our company called Shippo. They invested roughly 2.5 years ago. They were almost our first money in. They also took a board seed. Back then, when we were evaluating different investors, we wanted to find a relationship that would be sustainable, that would be healthy, and productive for the next 10 years. Like, investors are the kinds of people, or they're like hires that you cannot fire. You're stuck with them forever. So you really have to make sure that you're picking someone that you will actually enjoy working with and hopping on phone calls with almost every single week.
It's like a marriage you can't get divorced from.
Yes, exactly. So when we started by doing due diligence on the investor as well, so really turning the table around. They did due diligence on us. They gave us a term sheet. Then we started calling up founders that they've invested in, not only the founders that have succeeded, but also the founders that have failed, to figure out how did these investors react when shit was hitting the fan? How do they respond when things aren't going well?
It turns out that stuff isn't always up and to the right. And it's a really good point. When we're talking to companies and we're beginning to get to know each other, we're thinking about putting terms down. We're always kind of very clear to say, go and talk to a bunch of our founders. I can give you 3 names, but through your own network, back channel, and not just do it for us. You should do it for everybody, because every investor will talk about how value add they are. They'll be like, we can help with introductions, and we can help with networking, we can help you with future fundraising. It turns out that that's often kind of bullshit. And whilst everybody tells the same story, there is, I think, a big gap between okay investors and really great investors. So I'm just kind of wondering, who in the audience is a founder of a startup? So most of you. And how many of you have external board members, external VCs that you work with? Okay, so just a couple.
And who wants money from Andy today? Yeah, solved your problem right now.
This is great. It's like deal flow in the making.
Yeah, exactly.
As a former founder myself, and with all of the discussions that we have, I've probably spoken to hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs. And what's very clear is you can kind of stratify investors into kind of 3 levels. You have the vast majority, the kind of 75% in the middle, who are fine. Right, they're pretty benign, they're not going to get in the way, they give you money, and then they kind of disappear back, and you can ask them for things. Then you've got maybe the kind of 10 or 15% who are actually actively useless and can get in the way and can harm your company. And, I'm not going to name any names, but people know who they are, and it turns out that founders talk. And then you've got maybe the 5 or 10% at the very top. And the way that you can become the very top investor is by, number 1, not getting in the way. Number 2, being proactive and being helpful at the right time. And we were talking about this before, and just keeping the companies top of mind. So when you're meeting with other investors, when we're meeting with corporates, making sure that we're thinking about which of our companies we can push forward and kind of get in front of them.
So you did the whole due diligence and the kind of the first dates, so to speak, with your investors. What was it that made you go with Andy's firm? What were some of the things that made them stand out versus other people?
So we talked to a couple of companies that have failed, and we heard consistently from all of the founders that SoftTech has been supportive throughout the entire process. They've always been responsive. And that was the other thing that a lot of people warned me. If everything is going right, the investor will always respond. If things aren't going right, that's where you see the true character of the investor. So I was specifically looking for that. And then I think the question is always about, everyone says they're value add, but what does value add actually mean? So I was looking for people who are...
Value add, founder friendly.
Exactly. I mean, that's easy. It's easy to say, but how do you put that into action? And I think what I've seen, what's been most helpful for us is investors, they don't know my company better than I do, but they know this overall space very well. They see thousands of companies. So they are great at benchmarking, they are great at pattern recognition. So I was looking for investors who know SaaS companies very well. And then just must-haves are investors who are very responsive, who respond to emails like at every hour if it's urgent, who keep you top of mind when they're seeing other deals that are potential partners or potential clients, and then also when they go out and network with other investors for the next round of financing.
And there's the little things, like we shared a breakfast burrito earlier today.
We did.
That was nice.
You gotta keep them fed. Well, and what was your pitch when you were talking to Shippo and you kind of went in and were explaining, why you might be a good partner? What were some of the things that you highlighted?
I mean, and Laura kind of hit the nail on the head. Like every VC, we talk about, we want to be helpful, we want to be value add, we can help with networking connections. But then I think the proof is in the pudding, right? And we as we're getting to know companies, we begin to make introductions. We want them to think, of this as a very long relationship. And being the first money in, I'd say we have a different relationship with the founders than a Series B or Series C or a Series D VC would. We go from being, maybe the first board member to kind of maybe stepping back over time and becoming more of a confidant, and because really after kind of Series A or Series B, we're almost completely aligned with the founder, right? We're going to be sitting further down the preference stack than almost every other VC that comes in. So we're really kind of looking to keep the founder's interests and the team's interests top.
I would agree with that. To quickly jump in here, I'd say seed stage investors, they're really looking for the right founder. Like A or B investors, they're looking more at metrics, but the very first money in, you've got a strong connection with the investor. They invested in you because they believe in you. They know that the company might pivot over time or change, but you are never going to change. So that's really like a statement of like belief in you as a person, and I really appreciate that. So I would say, another thing I learned from SoftTech was SoftTech took a board seat at our seed stage level, and initially I was a little worried about giving a board seat away that soon, but it was extremely helpful to have an investor at the table with the understanding that when the Series A comes, they're going to step off and make room for another investor to not dominate the board.
You mentioned that it's a delicate balance. You want an early investor to be there for you, but you also don't want them to micromanage. You don't want them to be annoying and trying to second guess everything you do. What is a good relationship like that, and how do you keep that balance between being there but not always being in the way?
So from my end, I would say what entrepreneurs can contribute there is to make sure that the investors are never surprised. So be proactive with communication and information as well. So we try to make sure that when we go into a board meeting, all the good news, but especially the bad news, has been communicated way in advance. So we're not running into a situation where our investors are hearing things for the first time. And that builds up trust. Then the other thing I've seen work really well is I tell investors what we're going to do, we execute on that, we tell them we've done it, and that's another mechanism to build up trust and make sure that moving forward, they're not questioning things I do.
Yeah, and you touched on the topic of micromanaging. I think that's important. I think that the very, very best early stage VCs are those that come from an operating background. It's a former founder, a former exec of a company that's gone from 0 to 100, 200, 300 people and has kind of seen that journey. The challenge, though, and I've seen this in a lot of investors, is that they sometimes struggle to step back. If they are consumer operators, they really want to get their hands dirty, and they really want to kind of get in and help run the business, and you have to accept that that's not your job. You're there to find great companies, you're there to support them. Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is our job is to pick great entrepreneurs in building great products in great markets and really kind of help them not fuck up too much for 18 to 24 months and then raise a really great Series A from a really great Series A firm. And effectively, we're passing the baton at that point. And that's when we move into kind of this kind of more confidant role that we talked about earlier.
And how do you kind of balance that? Because, I mean, you yourself, in the terms of, you have many companies like Shippo. So how do you kind of balance your portfolio? Every company is different, so you have a different mindset for each one. Everyone requires a certain amount of time. How do you not neglect someone while at the same time not driving yourself into the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I have a spot of ADD, and I think that actually serves me particularly.
I mean, you work 20-hour weeks, so how do you kind of balance it all out?
Right now, I have, I think, 6 companies fundraising for their Series A. So in Chrome every morning, there are 6 spreadsheets, 6 Google Docs that have the six lists of firms and progress that we're working through. And honestly, it will ebb and flow. There'll be companies where you're spending a ton of time with them. So Edith, that was on this stage earlier, we raised a Series A with them, with DFJ last October. And so really from kind of May through October last year, that was sucking up a ton of my time, and we were, a stunning result, and we were really happy with it. But once that was done, I was able to then step back and kind of reprioritize my time thinking about other things. I don't have a set block of time every day where I'm going to work on a particular company. Yeah. It's a very reactive thing, and my job, I'd say, is 50% looking at new companies, diligencing them, trying to understand the markets, trying to understand the kind of potential there. 35% helping my existing companies, so it could be anything from fundraising to pricing to strategy to hiring, and then 15% kind of coming to do fun stuff like this.
Very cool. And do you want, for both of you, is it important to have your early stage backer be in the same city or at least same time zone as you? Or does it not matter? Is that like a factor early on?
So that's an interesting question, because later on we raised a Series A from a firm that's based in New York, and I for sure see a difference there, and especially if something comes up later in the afternoon, how responsive people are. So for me, for the seed stage, it was quite important to get FaceTime as much as possible. I think that's really how you build a relationship, how you build trust. Even today, when I catch up with SoftTech, I still go into their office to do that once a month. So I do think that it was very helpful to have them in the same time zone. At the same time, we have other investors also for the seed stage that are in different cities, and they make a real effort coming to San Francisco at least once a month. Then they catch up with me over coffee, over breakfast, which is fine as well. So we're not hanging out constantly, but it's good to have FaceTime like once a month.
Yeah, I think it's just great to be able to see each other kind of as and when is needed as well. And Laura's absolutely right. We're pretty focused on investing in the Bay Area. We have companies in New York and Boston. We have a few in Canada as well. But it definitely, the relationship always feels easier when people are close by. Now, the nice thing is, I'm on the East Coast every couple of months. All the teams on the East Coast tend to be in San Francisco at least once a month, often for board meetings or for other events or, seeing customers. So it's not that hard, but it's certainly not as easy as being down the street.
Mm-hmm. And when you you take on multiple seed investors, is it important to have kind of a diverse portfolio in the sense that each seed firm brings different things to the table?
Yeah. So
in terms of skills and experiences?
To be completely honest, I think we have 10 different seed investors. Out of our 10 different seed investors, roughly 2 ended up to be helpful. SoftTech is one of them. That's why I'm here on stage with Andy.
All right. 1 out of 10.
But yes, I do think the problem with getting advice from too many people is always that people have conflicting advice, and at some point you just have to make a decision. So I prefer sticking with 1 or 2 investors to get consistent advice and feedback from these people, build a real relationship with these people over spending the same amount of time with all 10.
Does an investor get, if someone wants A and another investor wants B, if you choose the other one that you not go against, but
we get really pissed off.
No, but I'm saying
very angry.
But does that hurt the relationship? Does the person okay, will they be okay, you went that way instead of this way? I'm kind of gonna take a step back. Does that happen?
I've not seen that happen, but I also think you have to explain to them how you came to that decision.
Yeah.
Even if you don't choose A or B, but C, just explaining the thought process of why you think this is the best option. And if the investor is still upset about it, then they seem to be very stubborn or bad investors.
Yeah.
I mean, on the point about kind of the makeup of the investors you bring on, one of the things that we talk to the companies about a lot is, as you're building your seed round, which these days is kind of $2 or $3 million, which is hilarious because that was a Series A back in my day, is looking for firms that have the ability to kind of put more capital in. Because, we talked earlier that it's not always up and to the right. Companies often need a little bit more cash before they get to the milestones to raise a Series A. And one of the issues with raising kind of a party round where you might raise $2 million, but it's, everyone's putting in 250K chunks, is that those people tend to fall away into the background very quickly when the going maybe gets a little bit harder and you need to kind of put a bit more cash in. Mm-hmm. But when you have a couple of larger funds, both of whom are writing $1 million or so check, then it's in our best interest to make sure that company has the cash. We have the resource to be able to put more money in as well.
As an investor, do you have any say or concern about who else is in that round with you?
Yeah, I think a big part of our job, especially when we're leading seed rounds, is to help the entrepreneur build the very best syndicate. And what we try and do is find, one other large firm who we like working with, who we think are going to be valuable in terms of their experience in the network, but then also kind of thinking about value-add angels. So, in Laura's case, who are the angels that we could bring on that have deep experience kind of building for the API economy, or perhaps angels that had deep experience in shipping and logistics. Areas where we don't, but through our network we can actually bring that in.
Very cool. We have less than 2 minutes left. I would love each of you to kind of share one maybe not obvious question that a founder should ask a potential investor before they accept money. Or just an important question. It doesn't have to be super contrarian.
I think you want to find out kind of how far through the fund the investor is, and if they keep any money for follow-on. So, if you have an investor that has a $50 million pot, they're $45 million into that, you're maybe the last investment, and they don't keep cash to follow on, then they won't be able to be supportive in the case that you need more money, or they won't be able to kind of follow on into the Series A as well. And for later stage investors, they like to see participation from the earlier VCs. That's a very strong signal that that the company is doing well and that we're excited about it.
To piggyback on that, also look at the fund size. If it's a huge fund and they're only investing, 50 or 100K, that means that you won't matter a lot to that investor. Even if the brand is a huge brand, it doesn't make a difference. Like, a huge brand won't help you out that much unless the investor is really engaged, and the investor won't be really engaged unless he has a significant stake in the company.
Yeah, we see this a lot. I know we have like 25 seconds, but we caution our companies from taking money from the big name VCs early, right? If they put in 250K or 150K, you'll get literally zero from them. And the big risk is that if they don't lead the Series A afterwards, you kind of look like damaged goods. They'll say, well, what is it that these people know that we don't about this deal? If they're not the ones
risk
to lead.
kind of thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we'll end on signaling risk. Thank you, guys. Awesome.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.